Okay, so it looks like we're ready to go.
The Guyana Business Journal and the Caribbean Policy Consortium presents Transforming Guyana. In each episode, Dr. Blackman and Dr. Lewis will tackle a different area of interest for transforming Guyana.
Well, good morning, colleagues, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Guyana Business Journal and the Caribbean Policy Consortium webinar series, Transforming Guyana. I'm Terrence Blackman, Chair and Associate Professor of Mathematics at the Medgar Evers College in the City University of New York and the founder of the Guyana Business Journal. And as usual, even though he's been absent for a few programs, I'm joined by Dr. David Lewis of the Caribbean Policy Consortium and Manchester Trade in Washington, D.C. As many of you ask every time we do one of these programs, the Guyana Business Journal aspires to catalyze a stronger, more inclusive, and prosperous Guyana. And we aim to achieve this by championing equitable opportunity. So we publish transformative and pragmatic, those are our words, transformative and pragmatic thought leadership that empowers all Guyanese. We focus on improving economic, social, and security conditions, on fostering a diverse and equitable society where everyone has a fair chance of success. And we're also focused on building a thriving democracy. We advocate for harmonious, resilient, and flourishing nation. And we aim to ensure that all Guyanese citizens benefit from Guyana's economic growth, regardless of background or beliefs. The Transforming Guyana series tackles sort of the critical issues surrounding Guyana's oil and gas development. And we do this by fostering dialogue, the conversation we're having now, which is aimed at sort of bridging the gap between experts, prominent Guyanese voices, and the diaspora. You know, this sort of ensures diverse perspectives on far-reaching impacts of the oil and gas development. You know, we try to unveil sort of opportunities and challenges, and you'll hear some of those opportunities discussed here today. You know, we challenge the conventional wisdom, but the aim is always to offer a balanced, insightful look at Guyana's potential benefits and its pitfalls. And I think thirdly, the aim of the series is to help us to chart a sustainable path, right? Explore potential benefits, innovative, effective strategies to maximize the positive impacts of oil revenues on the Guyanese people and on the nation's future, but also to learn from the experiences of other oil-producing countries and mitigate the potential risks that we face. So, you know, think of us as voices, hopefully not crying in the wilderness, but voices of reason that aim to offer guidance to our brothers and sisters who sit in the diaspora. Today, we're pleased to welcome some esteemed guests. First, Dr. Lyra Matthews, I think Guyana's foremost thinker on questions of the diaspora. He is an academic whose work focuses on immigrant adjustment and mental health. Dr. Matthews is a Guyanese professor, I think Professor Emeritus now, of Community and Health Services at the SUNY Empire State College, and brings a wealth of experience in immigrant adaptation, mental health, cross-cultural learning. You know, it should be noted that his research on these matters is widely used in academia, training programs, And his latest book, which I read not so long ago, kind of broadly explores the challenges and identities of Caribbean immigrants in the U.S. Dr. Matthews is a champion for immigrant rights, a respected scholar and community leader. And whenever I have anything to think about the diaspora, my first sort of touchstone is to find out what Lear is thinking. We're also graced today with the presence of Dr. Rosalinda Rasool, the head of the Diaspora Unit under the Guyana Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Previously, Rosalinda served as the executive director of the Guyana Manufacturing Services Association. She also chaired, or perhaps still chairs, the board of directors of Transport and Harbors Department. Ms. Rasool brings extensive management expertise and a wealth of experience from local and international private sector engagements to this new role. And I know that she has been really an advocate for diaspora engagement. I think I recall at some early point her meeting with heads of missions and honorary councils to broadly outline her vision and to gather insights for harnessing diaspora resources for national development. So hopefully she will share some of this with us today. Our next guest is Stacy Mollison, and Stacy is a dynamic president and CEO of the Libra Management Group, a global strategic sourcing and management consulting firm. It was founded in 2006, and I should note here that Libra is an SBA certified 8A minority women-owned small business with headquarters in Decatur, Georgia, offices in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in Guyana. The firm's expertise includes project management, laboratory support, logistics, real estate, emergency preparedness, IT solutions, and global sourcing. And under her leadership, Libra has secured contracts with private firms and the U.S. federal government and the government of Guyana, providing services and products across various sectors. Most importantly for us, Stacy has been recognized as one of Atlanta's top 100 women of influence and has received numerous awards for her contributions to business and community service. And she is born in Guyana, raised in Brooklyn. She's dedicated to philanthropy, entrepreneurship training, advocacy for economic advancement in both the United States and Guyana. She's an active member of the board of several organizations, including the Guyana Georgia Tourism Business Authority and the Guyana Association of Georgia. So I want to welcome you to the program, Ms. Stacy Moss. And finally, your last guest, Ern Alexander. I should say in full disclosure, Ern is the elder brother of a really, really good friend of mine, and a friend I count. But Ern is a seasoned professional with extensive experience in corporate services and public affairs. He's currently engaged in corporate governance with the Clarion House Group. He served as the Associate Director of Corporate Services at Leeds & Partners, where he's led strategic initiatives in corporate governance, performance and risk management, HR, and information management. Arn was instrumental in enhancing corporate performance and compliance, acting as the company secretary for Remuneration and Benefits Committee, managing significant projects. Prior to this, Arn has held key roles at the London Development Agency, including head of public affairs. And in this role, he developed and implemented public affairs strategies, coordinated with political stakeholders, and managed internal and external communications. He's also provided executive support to the chief executive and the board of directors, ensuring effective stakeholder engagement and organizational governance. And of importance to many of us in Guyana, many of you will probably know that Ern's career began at the Guyana High Commission in London, where he served as the second secretary, focusing on trade, tourism, investment promotion, and consular services. He holds a MA in law with a specialization in international law from People's Friendship University in Russia. And with this robust background in corporate governance and public affairs and strategic leadership, Erin continues to contribute to the development of the Guyanese diaspora through his service in GUSDA. He made me say GUSDA and not GUSDA, which I was saying earlier, which is the Guyana UK Social Development Association. So I want to welcome you guys all to this episode of Transforming Guyana. And perhaps now, having introduced our distinguished guests, let me ask my co-host, Dr. David Lewis, to bring a few words of welcome from the Caribbean Policy Consortium. David?
Thank you, Terence. Good morning, and thanks for having me back, although we've had other Caribbean Policy Consortium colleagues fill in for me, which is part of the institutional development experience. As you all know, with your organizations, we're trying to diversify and expand our reach. But truth be told, this is an initiative Terence and I started going on 3 years now. So we kind of want to keep the brand. So I will be back for more, not to worry. And thank you all for joining us today. I'm just going to make a few quick comments. Not from the Guyana diaspora perspective, because although I'm adopted Guyanese, I'm not Guyanese, I'm not diaspora, but I'm Caribbean diaspora. And we've been now, this year we have 40 years of business in Washington, D.C. and in the region. And I sort of just wanted to point out the importance of this in the regional framework and the U.S. Caribbean framework in terms of best practice benchmarks on Caribbean diaspora initiatives. And really kudos to Rosalinda and the ministry, who particularly over this past year, not just 2024, but really over the past 12, 14 months, have really geared up the movement on engaging the diaspora of Guyana all over. And I know she's going to speak about a series of initiatives that they're going to get launching very, very soon, starting close by here in New York. And I think that's going to be an excellent boost to what many of the Guyanese American diaspora organizations have been doing in the past, and which in comparison to other Caribbean diasporas for too many years did not have the engagement, the support, and the linkage with government initiatives. So Rosalinda, to you, the minister, the president, I think this is critical. We've seen it voiced in their visits to all the communities here in the U.S., in England, Canada, and so on. And I think this is really timely and comes at an excellent point of time. But all of us, of course, here in the U.S. know of the strong experience of the Jamaican American diaspora experience. We just had Caribbean American Heritage Month here in Washington, June this year, with events in Congress, at the White House, the State Department, and with visiting diaspora delegations from about a dozen states of the Union. And truth be told, a lot of the Caribbean American heritage spirit and energy has been led and concentrated with the Jamaican American diaspora. So there's an experience there for us to look at as we push to diversify with the diaspora of other countries. And we've been successful in making sure that the Guyanese presence for that grows and is stronger. And this year we had that with Dr. Peter Ranzarup, Kamal Samaru of DDL, and various others visiting, not just from Guyana, but from the Guyana American diaspora groups in the nation. Despite all the troubles, though, Haiti, for example, has been also a very successful diaspora experience for many years, maybe in part because the situation in the home country has been so bad that the Haitian diaspora in the U.S. has really had to step up on its own. But again, I point that to friends and colleagues because it's a very strong, dynamic experience, bridging the political representation spectrum. As you know, we now have a Haitian American representative in the U.S. Congress from Florida in the House of Representatives, and we've had strong presence in state and local politics for many years, as well as, of course, a growing and very dominant Haitian American creative, artiste, entertainment community, as well as in the business sector. So these are experiences to look at and see for regional collective action from that Caribbean experience, which I thought I'd mention today because Guyana and its diaspora can build on that. We're not alone. We're not in a vacuum. There's a lot that's been going on, and I think it's an excellent effort at this point in time. So again, welcome to all. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get on with the show, Terence.
Well, thank you, David. Let me again note as David has that really it's a broad effort, and I just wanted to give a sense that this morning we have folks, global immigration consultants. We have folks joining us from Mississauga, Ontario. We have folks joining us from London. We have folks joining us from St. Kitts and Nevis, from Decatur, Georgia, and all across the world. And so, it is this huge diaspora to which we want to address some of the issues. And I think it's always important to as David, to look to examples, the example of the Haitian diaspora, the example of the Jamaican diaspora. And I think part of what is driving is this sort of burgeoning oil and gas business that has emerged in Guyana. And I think that there is an opportunity here to highlight how this diaspora can contribute to this evolving landscape. Most recently, ExxonMobil made the sort of final investment decision around the Whiptail development. And what this, in a broad sense, leads to is, so perhaps by 2027, Guyana might be producing close to 1.3 million barrels of oil per day. It fundamentally transforms, and I think this is the point that we've had in mind for the last 3 years. There's a fundamental transformation of Guyana, and those of us who think about Guyana first are thinking, how do we not miss this opportunity? How do we ensure that Guyana never has to look back on this opportunity with woe? And it's in that sense this program is being sort of put to the public, and we've done many of these, and perhaps I should start with throughout the webinar series, the constant refrain has been the importance of the human infrastructure of the country as the thing that will sustain it and ensure the sustainability. And so the overarching question, I think, for us as we think through what we want to think through is, what is the role that the diaspora could play in upskilling our workforce, in building skills partnerships across sectors, in advancing the national interests abroad, and in deepening the connections with the host country. So you see, Guyana should be, the Guyanese diaspora in St. Kitts should be deepening and advancing Guyana in St. Kitts, and advancing Guyana in the UK, and advancing Guyana in Toronto. All of these folks who've joined here today. And so I just wanted to start here before I go to Lyrics Begin to say, I think these are the pivotal areas, at least as I see them, from the academic world. Upskilling and knowledge transfers, building skill partnerships, advancing the national interests abroad, and deepening the connections with host countries. And I think to harness this diaspora's full potential, we have to establish some dedicated platforms, and I hope Rosalinda will talk more about the platforms, and provide incentives. I know this is often sometimes frowned upon, to provide incentives to encourage investment and knowledge transfer, to streamline processes, and to leverage technology to ensure a seamless and ongoing dialogue with Guyana and her various diaspora communities. And so I look forward to the discussion today and the insights on how we can effectively engage the diaspora in our nation's development. And I'm really pleased to, start this off with Dr. Lyra Matthews, who will give us some sense of the diaspora. I won't offer a specific guideline. I'll let Lyra say whatever he's prepared to say at this moment, because you're the expert. And so Dr. Matthews, give us some sense of, your assessment of potential contributions of the diaspora to Guyana's economic, social, and cultural landscape.
Okay.
Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Terence. You hear me well?
Yes, I can hear. We can hear you fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good morning, all, and thank you for inviting me today. I will focus on some of the characteristics of the Guyanese diaspora and implications for engagement and national development. Like other diasporas, the Guyanese diaspora was created by push factors such as economic hardship, political strife, the search for better family opportunities, and life chances. Guyanese emigration, especially to the US, increased after the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1965. In subsequent years, outmigration had increased to the point where it was said more Guyanese resided outside than within the country. But how do we perceive the Guyanese diaspora? And I think this is important. We talk about diaspora. What does it mean to us, and how is it described in terms of the Guyana experience, the Guyanese experience? I argue that the Guyanese diaspora is not a monolith, but rather a web of identities, historically and socially constructed. My view is that the Guyanese diaspora is a replication of racial ethnic composition, generally with their respective enclaves in the adopted home. Separation by religious differences has also been observed. These population clusters among Guyanese immigrants appear to be a reflection of pre-existing home country norms, conditions, and sentiment. It is flawed, in my mind, to assert that there is one Guyanese diaspora. Such a label may be motivated by A, diplomatic or political expediency, the hope that it would somehow inculcate the idea of racial ethnic harmony, and C, assuming a common vision. To promote the idea of a single Guyanese diaspora would be to deny the existence of tension and mistrust, which one of my colleagues recently referred to as the elephant in the room. The furtherance of in-group communication and trust is indeed to solidify diaspora connectedness. The Guyana Cultural Association of New York is one of the organizations that has been instrumental in transcending some of the divisions between groups in the Guyanese diaspora, particularly in the areas of culture. The GCA refers to this process as bridging. Much more of this is needed. These observations provide some insight into the psychodynamics and challenges of the nation's inter-ethnic relationship. Although a sizable number of Guyanese reside outside of the country, enough attention has not been given to their continuous interest in and contributions to the home country, nor the underlying tensions in the diaspora. Like other diasporas, Guyanese tried to find a comfortable niche in their new transnational environment. Not unlike some of the other diaspora groups, there are those who continue separation based on ethnic identity. Regardless Regardless, over the years, leaders have emerged in these community clusters in the areas of business, religious and community organizations, and religious and various areas of influence in their respective communities. In New York, for example, these include Shirley Chisholm, MacDonald Holder. In Brooklyn, while in Queens, pundits and other religious and business people are well known. Many in the diaspora maintain social, political, and economic relationships with the home country. Advances in information technology have afforded the diaspora easier access and currency to the home country's information apparatus and affairs, making them more attuned to the contemporary socio-political climate. One of the most rapidly growing entities in the Guyanese diaspora is the Hometown Association. These are organizations formed by immigrants from the same village, community, or shared institution to support the home country in cash or kind. Hometown associations represent a transnational identity rooted in both the country of origin and adopted home, seeking to retain cultural ties and improve their home country communities. Among Guyanese immigrants in North America, there are more than 400 such associations and growing, doing much more than charity work. Maybe 25 years ago, when these organizations started, one could say they were primarily doing charity work, but they're beyond that now. An examination of their broad functions reveals the extent to which they are located at the epicenter of development efforts, heritage connections, and cultural identity.
Mm-hmm.
There is much more to the diaspora than sending cash remittances. The diaspora has impacted various sectors of the homeland infrastructure, including education, healthcare, politics, culture, sports, and a range of social services. Some of the contributions are done in partnership with local organizations. In the past, there have been concerns about the risk of diaspora contributions absolving the local government of its civic welfare responsibilities or creating dependency on migrant-generated remittances. There's a view that the unending support of outreach to the land of our birth will eventually wane. However, contrary to such a dismal prognosis, I argue that the Guyanese diaspora wants to be engaged and is unlikely to diminish to a significant degree. Rather, it will be sustained because it is not time-phased, amorphous entity that faces extinction. The push-pull factors of immigration will continue because economic and social imbalances between countries are likely to remain operative. Voluntary and forced migration will continue to result in people's movement across borders due to national disasters, civil unrest, or unpredictable factors, or by choice, while maintaining links with the homeland. Skills and knowledge transfer, considered a key component of the diaspora home country relationship. However, consistent engagement of the diaspora can be challenging. Owing to Guyana's needs in the medical field, for example, the government recently recruited nationals of other countries, mainly from non-English speaking countries. At the same time, evidence-based research and planning, which inform the nation's capacity to reach its full potential, should include the effects of in and out migration on development, particularly in light of the anticipated impact of the oil and gas industry.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge of who is coming in and out of the country and their resident status are essential. In order for the diaspora to to be effective as a contributing entity to national development, there must be a national diaspora engagement strategy. This will ensure a collaborative approach, an enduring bond with the home country. A well-organized engagement strategy enhances the activities designed to build a relationship of trust and mutual interest between the government, the Guyanese diaspora, and the hometown. Other countries, and Terence mentioned some of them, Mexico, and then there's China, Dominican Republic, have well-structured diaspora engagement strategies. A well-planned diaspora engagement strategy must include participation of persons of all ethnicities and skills. The diaspora engagement strategy document was allegedly prepared by the International Migration Organization in 2007. This apparently was prepared for the Guyanese, for Guyana. To be effective, and Rosalina hopefully would throw some light on this issue. To be effective, planning for diaspora engagement should include multi-ethnic, apolitical group of Guyanese from the diaspora and the homeland who are knowledgeable about the demographics and culture of the nation. The participation of a sizable number of participants in the UG-sponsored First Diaspora Engagement Conference in 2019 is testimony to the continuing interest of the diaspora in the home country's development. That conference series should be continued. Conducting skills gap analyses to quantify what is available and what is needed for sustained development would be helpful. Diaspora engagement planning must also include second-generation Guyanese immigrants, since continuity is important. Who benefits or loses if the diaspora is not unified? How we communicate and how we work on common goals in the interest of the homeland are questions at the core of defining the Guyanese diaspora and its role in development planning. I close with a hidden dimension of Guyana's development planning. I guess this has to do with my background in social work and my interest in research. One of the remarkable qualities of the Guyanese diaspora is the care and concern shown for the welfare of the entire country. In a recent discussion with a group of Guyanese in New York, the following argument was made. While it is widely recognized that all Guyanese should be allowed to participate in the country's development, there are persons who are physically and mentally challenged and are in the conundrum of visibility as well as invisibility in the society. Seriously addressing the needs of this population seems crucial to all the talk about development and anticipated riches from gas and oil money. We know that they exist, but are unaware of their challenges. With the desire for inclusiveness, there must be a methodology to determine their numbers and the examination of the social processes which can facilitate their well-being. This will guarantee medical, educational, work, and social development for such persons. Their role can be delineated based on their abilities, and programs funded through the diaspora can assist with their development. Raising this issue demonstrates a broader, kinder side of the Guyana diaspora as it relates to development plans. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Lear. I think you raise a number of really salient points. And Rosalinda, you have the hard challenge, I hope, a harder challenge than I do, to kind of really, you don't need to respond in this manner, but I think you want to certainly touch upon sort of issues. I mean, I think Leah raises these questions of, the population clusters of the diaspora and how they're sort of different, right? So, and we were talking about this prior to, in making choices for the program. There's the DC diaspora, there's the Atlanta diaspora, there's the UK diaspora, there's the Florida diaspora, and all of these groups of Guyanese are slightly, there's a slightly different kind of organization that's there. And so, trying to wield from this a common vision for what diaspora engagement looks like is definitely a challenge. I think Claire also kind of spoke to the issue of, the tension and the mistrust, and at times the elephant that sits in the room that sometimes we have difficulty identifying, and I think really critically to, in specific organizations like the Guyana Cultural Organization, but more importantly, the almost 400 hometown associations, and to think through how your policy, from the standpoint of being the representative of the government in this context, how to formulate that policy. And I think the final key point was around this question of a national diaspora engagement strategy as a way to create a methodology for doing the kinds of things that we need to do, so that they're all part of some larger plan. And then finally, I suppose the last point, which is a kind of a quirky one, which is I say quirky in a good sense, because it's a really insightful thing to link the question of mental health to the question of the engagement of the diaspora. And this raises a number of really interesting issues, which I haven't thought through completely myself. And then finally, I think the one which I think is important, I look at my own children and think, we should also be thinking about, where the second generation of Guyanese sit in relation to some larger diaspora strategy. So, I don't mean to be kind of rooting for the home team, but somehow to say that perhaps the children of Guyanese should be a priority in the broader diaspora engagement strategy. So I'll give you the floor now, Rosalind. You're under no pressure, as you know. I want you just to speak to the challenges. We understand it's a very challenging job that you have, and so we want you to speak to the challenges as you see them, and issues that you think will be of import to the audience. And you do have an audience from the diaspora all across the world. So there you go. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Professor Blackman. And it's always a privilege and an honor to be on your program, which addresses quite a lot of topical issues relating to the Guyanese diaspora. I was looking at the agenda, and I'm listening to the conversation. It's probably gone off a little bit into a different area for discussion, but I don't mind, because I think it's very topical. To start out with, there are a lot of things that have been said by Mr. Matthews that are debatable. And also, I'm thinking that perhaps another time off screen, we can discuss perhaps another show that delves into some of the crucial issues raised by Mr. Matthews that are set to be reflective of the concerns and challenges of the diaspora. And I think I would love to be a part of such a program, because I think there's also a lot of things that have developed over the years that are missed. And therefore, that information gap needs to be filled whilst I do agree there are some challenges that exist, and those are things that we work on, and I'll get to that in a few. I do believe that there is a lot of missing information in some of those things that are being addressed there, which we do need to get out there, basically. So I want to start off with in terms of the something that was said belatedly in his presentation as it relates to the National Diaspora Engagement Strategy. Now, when I came into this position, that was a document that I saw and I read, and I took some time to ponder on it, basically. And I can tell you my first impression of the strategy, of that draft strategy, was that when you read it, you get the impression that there is no ministry in existence in Guyana, to be quite honest. Because what the role of the diaspora unit entailed, having read that document, you'll think the Ministry of Education, Agriculture, Finance, Labor did not exist, because the mandates of these ministries actually were given as the things that the unit should be engaged in, and that was a bit of an issue there. So it was something that needed to be dealt with very differently and had to be relooked at more or less in terms of how it was developed and whether there was a good understanding of what exists currently and the roles and responsibilities of different agencies exist, so that those can be addressed in terms of what would be the specific responsibilities of the unit as it relates to diaspora engagement, and then what the ministries and other agencies in Guyana role would be, not just for national development, but also how they bring the diaspora into that discussion, basically, and of course Guyana's development. So that was the first issue that I saw with respect to the unit and the strategy, and you can run with something like that. So if we try to do something in the area of tourism or education, are we overlapping with the role of the Ministry of Education, so to speak? And those were some of the things that needed to be addressed, basically. So what I did basically, of course, talking to some of the senior persons with respect to diaspora engagement, is to look at what is it that the country wants and how does it include the diaspora into this here. And what I did was to begin to look at indeed some of the prevailing challenges of the diaspora, and we began to listen to them, to hear what the concerns are. And that is where I agree with some of the things said with Mr. Matthews in the terms of there was a distance in that engagement at that point in time. I've heard of instances where people did show an interest in investing or even returning, and they weren't really that interest being given to it. So we started to address those challenges, basically, in terms of the engagement. Start by looking at those immediate interests of people right off the bat. What is it that you want in terms of investment? Which agency, which company are you looking at? And we began to start to facilitate those interests. And that's what the unit has been doing from the time of existence current, in getting off a lot of those interests, basically, whether it's to find jobs, whether you have an investment, and we literally worked through the entire process of an investment proposal from the time we engaged them and guided them through the steps they need to take, and then we assisted in furthering that proposal to the different agencies. We follow up with those agencies to find out what's going on, how far are you in that proposal, basically, again, coming from the diaspora, and then we make it work. So right now, even as we speak, we have a lot of projects that are bearing fruit as a result of the immediate engagement of the unit and the intervention of the unit now to make those interests become a reality in Guyana. So we've been busy doing that. But then we took a different turn as time went by, having assessed the diaspora's engagement, different interests, and of course where the country is going. So to pin to one model at all times may not necessarily be the right thing, because Guyana is changing every day and the dynamics are changing every day. So we want to make sure that we are flexible enough to change and to bring a different kind of engagement to the diaspora that is immediate, flexible, dynamic, like you said, pragmatic. So we take the hint as to where the country is going at a given point in time, and then how do we engage. So right now, for example, one of the major issues that are facing the country is labor shortages. And this is where we looked at how does the diaspora fit into this, or would be a source, be the solution, or one of the solutions to the labor shortages in Guyana. So do we begin to focus on some other issues or the priority issues, which are the labor shortages, basically? And we began to look at that. We started to talk. So we didn't just start engaging that, but what we did was to engage a myriad of stakeholders in Guyana to find out more about those gaps in the labor market, basically. So the diaspora unit hosted from last year to current 3 major stakeholder forums. And I get asked a lot, is the diaspora going to be involved in that discussion? And the answer is yes, but it's going to come in at the appropriate time. And I'll tell you why. if we are to take information out there, and Mr. Matthews is referred to that when you talk about evidence-based or information-based data being presented to diaspora, we needed to do exactly that. So the first thing we do is to engage the local stakeholders, both public and private sector stakeholders, to find out what are the realities that you're facing in the country in your different sectors. And the focus or the discussion was really diaspora. How can the diaspora be involved in this here? And all of these discussions, actually, you have media coverages of it, there are videos of it, so you can actually benefit from seeing that discussion to see that the focus was indeed on the diaspora. Having heard from the local stakeholders where the gaps are, what are the skill sets that are required, how do you see the diaspora playing a role in all of that there, we began now to start putting measures in place to engage the diaspora in terms of this. The job fair that you're going to be seeing on the first job fair, diaspora job fair, that you'll be seeing in New York on the 27th of July, is one of the measures that has been taken by the government to resolve that issue. So we have a total of about 30 companies that are coming up. These are private sector companies that are coming up to New York on the 27th, and they'll be bringing a lot of information in terms of how the diaspora in New York and surrounding states can be a part of that. Now, there are other diaspora job fairs that are slated for other countries, basically, because again, we're not tackling just one segment of the diaspora, but across the board. Now, that also includes not just the first generation, and I'm not sure if we have differences in that definition of it, but the first generation for us would be those who would have migrated, the Guyanese that migrated. The second generation for us are those who are children born of the migrants, basically. And that includes the second generation as well. Those are interested, of course, you identify yourself as Guyanese, because we know the second generation has that automatic entitlement to citizenship based on the law. But then of recent, we started to see a new thing developing where a lot of the third generation Guyanese, and these are the younger people that are very interested in Guyana, basically. Some of them have never even visited Guyana and have visited for the first time. And it's amazing to get their feedback in terms of their interests and what they can bring out. We saw that it's not only a great potential for filling the labor gaps and also widen that population that's needed for development, but we saw they bring a new set of skills that the country would need to take it into a different direction, a different level, because the new generation, the millennials as you call them, they're very tech savvy. They're very different in their value, the things they believe in, the way they get things done. And that's exactly what will be needed to push forward. So we started to talk about that. Of course, in the discussion, issues such as, their entitlement to Guyanese citizenship became a topical issue, and that's been discussed here as well. How do we treat that? Basically, we have the Immigration Support Services that deals with issues of citizenship being a part of our discussion group, basically, that we look at it, and then of course we make representation to the policymakers to say, this is what it looks like what we've discovered within the third generation of Guyanese, but their major concerns would be either citizenship or how did the children become part of that heritage of their parents or grandparents. And of course, this is where we are in discussing it. So I'm saying all of that to say it is not that government is not aware of the existing challenges there, but we are tackling it systematically, comprehensively, by addressing fundamental issues in the homeland. Because if those issues are not addressed in the homeland, then you'll just have a lot of discussions flying all over, and then you'll have a lot of frustration when people come here and then they realize, well, can my grandchildren get citizenship? And the answer will be no, because we need to tackle that at the policy level here in Guyana to make sure to see how can they get that, basically. All right. So that's
can I ask you just one question? So I noticed that when you mentioned the gap analysis, just a small question. Someone asked whether or not there is a link to the gap analysis that perhaps we could disseminate to folks.
You mean that stakeholder forum that I referenced? Yes, I can send all of that to you. The Diaspora YouTube page also has those videos on it. So if anybody goes to the Diaspora YouTube page, they will see this Diaspora unit, and you'll see some of those videos and clips also stationed on it. And if there's anything lengthier, I can always send it to you, and you can disseminate that to your wider database.
We'll certainly be happy to do that.
Yes, but for immediate purposes, if they go to the YouTube page of the Diaspora unit, they'll be able to see those videos there and the discussions.
You got it. I didn't mean to stop you. I just
Yes, that's it. So that was
yeah.
one. One of the other things too that I want to refer to that will resolve a lot of the challenges in terms of diaspora engagement is how do we approach the diaspora? And I think this is where, and this is, I'm afraid I'm going to have to superimpose my view on it, basically, and I forgive me
It's
for
fine.
doing that.
We're happy
It's
with you. See,
the thing about it is that when you talk about the kinds of segregation that exist in the diaspora and some of the challenges there, basically, when you craft a policy that caters for one group of people, we need to ask ourselves if we are getting a solution or we're widening a problem that exists. Because, for example, let's look at the banking situation in Guyana. I've heard the diaspora talk about challenges in opening an account in the bank. And I can assure you, the challenges that the diaspora has in opening an account is no different from the challenges that the Guyanese at home have in opening an account sometimes. And so, do I want to put something in a special policy that caters for the diaspora? And then, what about the locals there as well? Or do we look at the root problem, which would be the issues relating to the bank, and says, listen, you need to resolve this so that anybody, whether they're from the diaspora or whether they're homeland, basically, that comes to your bank can know that they can get through within a short period of time, and these are the documents and so forth. So what we wanted to do was not to create any document or policy that speaks to people based on some sort of external factor of differences, whether, and that difference will be the fact that you're overseas based versus whether you're local. I can assure you, housing, for example, people in the diaspora would talk about, sometimes it's difficult, or the wait time for getting a house lot is a long time. I can assure you there are lots of Guyanese here that has the same exact challenge. So when we talk about a strategy that looks at how do we incorporate people and resolve challenges that exist, it can't be for one group of people. It has to be across the board. So that way, Professor, when you talk about an engagement or a development that does not focus on ethnicity or focus on academic performance or does not focus on where you live or your religious belief or your creed, we don't want that sort of thing to be a basis at any way or shape in terms of development. It just be that there are merits, these are the requirements, and it doesn't matter whether you live here or there. As long as you satisfy that, then you have access to, let's say, a particular system, benefit, or something of the sort. And this is why I said it's my view and the direction that the unit has been engaged in the diaspora. So when somebody comes to me, to the diaspora unit, with a program, with an investment, with an idea, I wouldn't sit and think, okay, are you from Canada? Are you from the US? Which part of the US are you from? We don't do that. We're like, let's look at the proposal. We think this is good, and we give them advice. Let me give you an example. A couple days ago, I had a couple. And forgive me for saying this. I meant no disrespect, but I just need to show you how we work. And I know sometimes it can be. And this is a couple that is of Afro origin, Afro Guyanese origin. And forgive me, it meant nothing there, just to show an example, Professor. And they came into the office with an idea to do internet connections, basically in underserved areas or low income areas. And we thought it was a great idea. So what I did in engaging them was to tell them of some of the opportunities and the areas that they can look at, basically, to improve that proposal, more or less. I said to them, do the proposal, send it to me, and then we will take it up to the relevant agencies to have a look at it. And where we are right now, they've done the proposal, and the unit has actually forwarded that proposal to the agency. We will then be following up with the agencies to say, hey, can you facilitate a meeting with this group, because we think they have an amazing project here that can really help a bigger national issue. That was one. I have a lady, again, this is a woman of Indian origin, Guyanese Indian, from a different country. Basically, she's a second generation, basically. She has a project it's a financial payment project, basically, and also something in aquaculture. She came, we had the same discussion. We told her send the proposal, and with the proposal sent to us, we forwarded that proposal to the relevant agency, and we're working with it there. At no point in time in our engagement did we consider any historical issues. Basically, did we consider any differences in nature, in where you live, any differences in terms of the color of your skin, and nothing of the sort. For us, we know this is great for Guyana, and we're going to push it, basically, as long as we have it. And we have lots of evidence that we can substantiate it. So when it comes to engaging the diaspora, we look at how can our people, who quite rightfully, as Ms. Lear did say, left the country as a result of push factors. How do we get them to come back into the country, basically? And this is where the unit and the government has been working to make sure that what we do for the locals here in Guyana, we replicate for the diaspora there. So this is why you're going to see the job fairs coming up there that gives people information about the jobs that are available and how they can fill it. And I said to the companies, basically, or the Chamber of Commerce leaders or private sector leaders when we were having the planning for this job fair, I said, you know what? Sometimes some of you may not have some of the openings immediately based on the skill sets that a diaspora may have, but you do have access to the diaspora now to take their details, to create your own database, so that when these opportunities arise, then you know where to find them, basically. And this is what we were encouraging them to do all the time. So this has been our way of addressing some of the challenges that is equitable, that is fair, that's transparent, and that includes all Guyanese from all walks of life, from all corners of this earth, and to bring them into the level of development that we want. And that's the only way we're going to go forward.
Well, I want to thank you for that articulation of the philosophy in which you're working. I mean, I think, look, I've listened. So Laura Matthews, Dr. Matthews has really laid out his thinking around a diaspora engagement plan, and I think, or a national diaspora engagement strategy. And I think what you're saying, as I listen to you, is that you have a diaspora engagement strategy, and it's modeled in the following sense. You see the diaspora unit as a kind of catalyst, as a kind of conduit for the diaspora to the various agencies. So someone from the diaspora comes to the diaspora unit, and then if the issue is around a challenge in education, then they engage you, the diaspora unit, engage with the relevant authorities within the Ministry of Education. If it's a question of finance or something having to do with financial payments, then the diaspora unit engages with the Ministry of Finance on behalf of. If it's a question of recruitment of labor, then the diaspora unit engages with diaspora members, or connects in a sense. So I think what you're articulating is a philosophy of a diaspora unit as a catalyst.
But if I may, before Stacey comes up, Professor, just one quick thing there. That's just part of it. But in essence, one of the things that we're hoping to achieve, and this is why diaspora engagement is not just about the diaspora, but it's also with the locals here in Guyana. It's about helping the locals here, agencies, ministries, stakeholders understand the diaspora, what they want, and how can they improve their systems to include the diaspora. So, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to come to us. That will be an overload, so to speak, when you look at the numbers of the diaspora. What we're working on is creating an atmosphere here in Guyana where somebody can go to the bank and they can get through with their transaction at the bank without having to come to us, because the bank has been they've been educated in terms of this group of people, what their challenges are. Maybe they don't have a local address, they don't have a TIN as yet, basically. But how do you facilitate? And we've started to see some changes there. They can go to the Ministry of Education directly without having to come to us. So we want to create that kind of an atmosphere so that the diaspora feels you're actually at home, and you don't feel left out or isolated. Or when you come to Ghana, you feel like you're a strange one, basically. So we've done a lot of work, and we continue to do a lot of work with the locals here as well, to understand the diaspora better and to make sure that your system does not shut them out, or rather that the system is accommodating, understanding their differences and their complexities as well.
No, and I think, and your point is well taken in terms of, in a sense, privileging the home country by saying, how can the diaspora be involved, and then asking that question, looking from the person who is in Georgetown, looking through that eye, rather than looking through the eye of the person who is, sitting in the United States or in Canada or
right.
in Australia, or so that's a legitimate argument to make, and I think that what I want to do now is, so the way you can see the construction of the program. Dr. Matthews really gave us the kind of the scholar's view of what this issue is. I think you give us sort of, I am the executive trying to implement a diaspora engagement program. And so now I wanted to see what it felt like on the other side. And I wanted to bring in Stacey Mawson, who, through her lens of being one of the leadership group in the Guyana Association of Georgia, and then following Stacey to bring in Erin Alexander to kind of give their sense of how they're experiencing that diaspora policy. So, yeah, Stacey, you have the floor. I can't hear you. You are muted.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Terrence, for inviting me. Hello, Rosalinda, and all the other guests. I felt like Rosalinda just created the perfect segue into my strategy and into how we see it from the other side. We've worked really well with the Diaspora Unit, and we've been grateful for all the support they've lent and have a really good working relationship with Rosalinda. So I'll talk about how I see it as someone in the diaspora that's driving engagement in country in the United States. So we're in my project, I call it my project, it's called Destination Guyana Now. And when I started really thinking about diaspora engagement, we in the Guyana Association have formulated a committee called the Homeland and International Committee. And out of that committee, Destination Guyana Now, the project was formed. And so the reason that we formed that project is exactly what Rosalinda just said, that we recognize that the diaspora unit is but so big, and they can't really handle the enormity of all the things that the diaspora is asking, particularly not before we get to Guyana and then when we enter Guyana, because Rosalinda know I used to wear her out. And I don't as much now because we have a strategy that has kind of, changed and grown a little bit. So I'll talk a little bit about what Destination Guyana Now represents. So Destination Guyana Now, the project, is about how we engage people in the diaspora. And now I'm saying I heard both David and Lear say that the strategy is really broader than just about Guyana, because I think it really, when we talk about the economic development of Guyana now, today, and moving forward, it's going to be more than about the Guyanese diaspora, because of the sheer enormity of what's going to transpire with the transformation of our country. We're going to need more than just the Guyanese that are living abroad. So Destination Guyana really focuses on three phases. Phase one is a lot of what we're doing now: awareness and education. And I think one of the things I want to say, we have to create a new paradigm shift about the new Guyana, right? Because that first generation, they've really muddied the waters to the second and third generation about Guyana before. And so we really have to create a whole new information, awareness, and education about Guyana today. The geopolitical issues, the racial issues, the economic issues, and we just really have to bring people up to speed on where Guyana is today and why we're in a urgent situation to get people coming back to participate. I think it's urgent, right? There needs to be a higher level of urgency into how we engage the diaspora. So that's phase one. Phase two is everything Rosalinda just spoke about, which is that in-country engagement with stakeholders. So in October 18th to the 21st, we're hosting our second Destination Guyana Now Business and Investment Conference. Rosalinda was so gracious last year and hoping again this year to participate in it. And what we're saying is that exactly what she just laid out. We understand that the diaspora unit is just one piece of it. So we're engaging stakeholders from government, the different ministries that we know consistently as a representative in the diaspora that people come to consistently and is always asking me for points of contact. We understand the ministries that they need to get in contact with. We need those points of contact. We need them to come to the conference and hear from the diaspora, engage with them. And let me just give some success stories. One of the people that I think, two things, I heard her talk about banking. Last year, we had some banking partners there at the conference. People left Guyana with bank accounts because the bank was present at the conference and was able to really help people to understand what the requirements were, help people to get those requirements submitted, help people to get bank accounts before they left the country. I want to shout out Mr. Cummings from GRO. Somebody like him has been a great partner helping our second generation Guyanese to get their birth certificates, to be able to now get to. I have folks who now have national citizenship. They have Guyanese ID cards who are second generation Guyanese that attended and engaged in that process because what? The head of GRO was present at the conference and created a pathway for the diaspora Guyanese that when they come in, these are points of contacts that you are now able to get service. That's what we're talking about, that we understand has to happen, that there has to be an in-country engagement. The other thing that's important for U.S. citizens to understand, it's not just about the Guyanese government. The U.S. government has a responsibility to you too as a U.S. citizen to engage in that process. So we work directly with the U.S. Commercial Service, which is an agency under the Department of Commerce that's responsible for helping U.S.-based businesses to engage and launch into a country by working with you, assigning an agent in your home in the United States, and also assigning you a point of contact, which is Daniel Gaines. He's housed at the U.S. Embassy. Danny Gaines is our point of contact in Guyana that is solely and wholly responsible for assisting U.S. businesses to engage in Guyana. They can set those meetings up. They can help you to engage. They even do a full-fledged assessment. When I became a client of U.S. Commercial Service, they asked me, what did I want to get help with? What business services was I going to provide to Guyana? And then they had me fill out an entire assessment, and then they did a market analysis, 100% free of charge, and that they provided to me that could tell me that the services and the products that I wanted to offer in business to Guyana actually aligned with that country being somewhere that I can actually do business successfully. And I had put 5 countries, and believe it or not, my home country rated the best. Guyana rated top out of the 5 Caribbean countries that I had asked to do a market analysis. So these are resources that we can duplicate in both places. My representative with U.S. Commercial Service is housed in Atlanta at Georgia Tech at the Research Center, and that person is there. So I think that, and so phase 3, I'll say it's 3 phases. Phase 2 is in country, how we engage with private sector, because we engage with businesses in Guyana and people in Guyana, the Guyanese government, the U.S. government, and we have 4 pillars. Pillar 1 is, do I want to do business in Guyana? I'm interested in doing business in Guyana. Pillar 2 is, I'm interested in living in Guyana, whether that's an expat, a remigrant, whatever that is, I'm interested in living in Guyana. Pillar 3 is, I am interested in investing. I don't want to start a business. I may not want to live, but I'm interested in some form of investment, whether that's in real estate, whether that is an equity stake in a business. I'm interested. And then pillar 4 is so important, philanthropy. There's a whole host of people out there that's interested in just giving back to Guyana. How can they be involved in a philanthropic project that can support a community, that they can drive some form of assistance? assistance through. And so those are the 4 pillars. And then phase 3 of our program, once we come to Guyana, we meet, we connect, then how do we create real collaboration, real connectivity, and how do we start that consistent a sharing of information on both sides. And the last thing I'll say about this, Terrence, is I'm excited about the job fair, because I think that's something I would like to see happen. But I also want to say the thing, and I say this to Rosalinda, I've said this to you before. One of the things that I think that can really help is if we create a forum inside the country, in the US, where we have these same agencies, private sector companies that's coming for the job fair in one place, where we can get people from all over the United States to come. We have all these conferences in Guyana. Most the diaspora never, half of these people haven't been home in 20, 30 years, have never been home. But if we can get an activity happening in country. You know, I've been lobbying for this for years, Rosalinda. I think that the government should be working with private sector to create activities in country that's more than, job fair is great, where we can bring these agencies and people into a space where it's easier for the diaspora to come there, and then it informs them, educates them, and changes their mind about the new Guyana and why they, now they're just, a lot of them we have to convince to come home. And you know this, Rosalinda. We spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time convincing Guyanese to even take a look at Guyana. And that's why the education piece and I think the activity piece is going to be really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've teed it up here for Ern. So Ern, do you want to do business in Guyana? Do you want to go live in Guyana? Are you investing in Guyana? Or are you doing philanthropy in Guyana? Give us a sense of how you see this as one of the members of the leadership of one of the most important Guyanese diaspora organizations in the United Kingdom.
Well, thanks, Terrence, and good morning or good afternoon, fellow panel members, participants.
But you can say good afternoon. There are folks from London, and you can say good morning because there are folks from the US and Guyana.
Definitely. Thanks to Terrence and David for inviting me as a member of the Guyana UK Social Development Association, GUSDA, to participate in this discussion. And of course, thanks to all of the participants for their interest in this topic. I would probably give just a different slant on this because the remit of GUSDA is really narrow. However, I will share with you some of the strategies adopted by GUSDA in the pursuit of effective engagement, and to illustrate some of the successful diaspora contributions and initiatives. Additionally, I would look to highlight some of the tools and platforms that we've used to facilitate involvement and collaboration within the community here in the UK and between the community and Guyana. Let me from the outset state that the views expressed today from myself are personal and not necessarily the views of GUSDA. I'd first like to give you a bit of background on GUSDA, a charitable voluntary organization which was funded as a charity ball committee back in 1995, then evolved into a sports development association. Since 2017, we have transformed into a social development association. And this year we became a registered charity, having registered with the UK Charity Commission. I'm a former chair and currently sit on the board of trustees. So GUSDA's transformation into a social development association stemmed from a desire to do more for disadvantaged and vulnerable individuals and communities across Guyana and within the diaspora community here in the UK. We're all well aware of the extreme poverty in Guyana and the desperate need for initiatives to alleviate the suffering and hardships faced by individuals, their families, and communities. And despite our limited resources, GUSDA has made a positive impact through empowerment and education initiatives, donations of food, gift hampers, and sports and medical equipment. So what are some of the strategies that adopted by GUSDA for effective engagement towards its goals? I would just like to highlight two in the interest of time, which is first one being building a strong and united community, diaspora community, and two, leveraging collaborations and partnerships. Now, GUSDA recognizes that a strong and united diaspora community is vital. One that is proud of its heritage, aware of the issues facing Guyana, and willing to make a difference. It is no accident that GUSDA's strapline is building a stronger community. This reflects our commitment to unity and cohesiveness, and we are on that journey. This is no small challenge given Guyana's political and racially divided landscape, which is to some degree mirrored within the diaspora community. And we've heard Dr. Matthews elaborate some of this, referencing enclaves, etc. Now, GUSDA is consciously fostering this unity mainly through its annual events, the Guyana Folk Festival and the Guyana Family Sports and Fun Day, being the largest Guyanese events in Europe, attracting hundreds and sometimes thousands of participants of all ages and races. Apart from fundraising, these events are also designed to achieve specific aims. One, promoting Guyanese heritage, showcasing the richness of our cultural diversity. Two, involving the younger generations. So engaging young people of Guyanese parentage, helping them to connect with their cultural roots and each other as members of a diaspora community. This is we see as critically important. Creating networking opportunities. These events help to facilitate new connections and leveraging existing ones to support our goals. Fourth, we are providing economic opportunities. We offer a platform for small businesses, entrepreneurs, artists, service providers to showcase their products, services, talent, creating greater visibility and growth potential. And of course, we celebrate and showcase the success of Guyanese in the UK through our recently introduced GUSDA Guyana Diaspora Awards. So how do we go about leveraging collaborations and partnerships? We see collaborations and partnerships as essential for effective diaspora engagement, allowing us to pool our resources, share expertise, and maximize our impact. It is important that such collaborations are built on trust and a commitment to act in the interests of the communities that we serve. And just to give you a few examples of successful collaborations, I would reference GUSDA's pandemic relief efforts. So in response to the COVID pandemic in 2020, GUSDA partnered with Humanity Wins Foundation in Guyana and a UK-based radio presenter to raise funds and distribute essential supplies to vulnerable families. This collaboration enabled us to reach a large number of beneficiaries across multiple regions, amplifying our impact. I also reference our flood relief initiatives. Following the devastating floods in 2021, GUSDA again partnered with Humanity Wins Foundation and the radio presenter to organize a fundraising, what we call Zoomathon. This initiative pooled resources from donors in the UK and Canada, providing timely and effective relief to flood-affected families in regions 4, 5, and 10. I also reference our initiatives in supporting educational attainment, whereby to celebrate and inspire educational excellence, GUSDA partnered with the Dutch 4 Greenfield Harmony Group on the east coast of Demerara. Since 2019, we have been awarding gift vouchers to top-performing pupils from Clonbrook, Ansgrove, and Hope Primary Schools who have excelled at the National Grade 6 Assessment Examinations. So those are just a couple of examples. But the success of these collaborations was enhanced by having dependable individuals on the ground in Guyana to engage with these groups. Of course, personal contacts and networks of individual members have been instrumental in building trusted relationships. Collaborations have allowed us to work smarter, not necessarily harder, and they've also served to strengthen ties between the diaspora and local communities in Guyana, which fosters a sense of unity and shared purpose. So underpinning these strategies is a need to build trust within the community, and GUZA takes its apolitical stance seriously and ensures transparency by periodically updating our members and donors on how funds are used and the impact of our initiatives. Our recently acquired status as a registered charity will provide improved transparency, and this will foster a greater sense of trust and encourage support and involvement. So I would now like to touch on some of the tools used for increased involvement and collaboration. I have already alluded to some of these earlier. So of course, social media being the obvious one. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are instrumental for reaching a wider audience, especially our younger generations, for promoting events and raising awareness about our initiatives. Community radio. These allow us to directly target members of the diaspora community in promoting events and initiatives. Virtual events, especially during the pandemic, virtual events such as Zoomathons and Zoom concerts have allowed us to continue our activities, engage with the diaspora and raise funds effectively. And of course, we have online fundraising platforms. So while we have not been using platforms such as GoFundMe and Just Giving, now that we are a registered charity, these could be instrumental in our fundraising efforts, enabling us to reach donors globally. So what I'd like to do is to just conclude by saying that the experience that GUZA has, that GUZA demonstrates, the experience that GUZA has demonstrated that effective diaspora engagement requires a multifaceted approach. By building a strong and united community, leveraging collaborations and partnerships, utilizing the right tools and platforms, and fostering trust and transparency, we can amplify our impact and create lasting positive change. And as we move forward, I would urge everyone to consider how we can further strengthen these strategies and continue to work together for the development of Guyana. Together, we can make a significant difference. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I want to say, you know, one of the prompts that that we started off the program. So thinking about ways in which, you know, some of the racial, ethnic, social class, etc. divides that are challenging, the elephant in the room that Lair reference, that there are ways in which the diaspora can, you know, help to kind of provide some methodology for how this can reverse itself in Guyana. And I think that I really zoned in on, you know, the portion where you are saying our focus is on fostering unity on the ground in the diaspora at home. And actually, I think that in an interesting way that you might be more successful in London than we might be in New York, just simply because of the kinds of things that Lair talked about, you know, residential patterns, about ways in which people kind of move to various communities. And so this definitely makes the job that, you know, in a sense that Stacy and Rosalinda are, you know, broadly trying to implement something that requires. And what I hope is that coming out of the conversation that, you know, that you and Lair and others will be part of the sounding board for the people who are responsible for policy, for helping to think through this so that we can find those policy places that work more effectively. What I wanted to end on is to just give David a chance to respond. It's amazing how the time is running out when there's something actually important to say. There are lots and lots of questions, but I'm just going to put one comment up for people to reflect on for their last sort of comment. So David, I want you to kind of, you know, I noted in Lair's presentation at the very beginning was the notion of trust. And it was a theme that weaved its way all the way through to Aaron at the end, building trust. That's one of GUZA's key kind of characteristics. And certainly you need to build trust if you're going to do business in Guyana, if you're going to return and live in Guyana, if you're going to invest, and if you're going to engage in philanthropic activity. So give us your sense of, as the person who has their feet outside of Guyana, so you can look in on Guyana. You can give us a thought about the building of trust. And then as you do that, I wanted to share two comments which I think captured something about our conversation. So one from Colin Welsh. Yeah, it says, in principle, the diaspora strategy is directional sound. The execution of the strategy is challenging. And these challenges reside mainly in the bureaucratic institutions, banking, required licensing, government approvals, etc. And that broadly, these are also regional challenges. And then a second comment, which I think captures sort of what we've been saying from a slightly different perspective. So in a sense, you're saying, well, we don't have a formal strategy. So in the absence of a formal strategy document, we should be thinking that the first role is facilitation, the medium-term action, the third more long-term. And so, I'll leave this to you at the very end, Rosalind, to kind of give us a sense of how you see it from the government side. How does the sort of broad One Guyana strategy sort of fit into, how does diaspora involvement fit into that broadly? So those are the two questions you can reflect on, David, and then we'll go through first Stacy closing, then Ern, and then Lear, and then we'll give the honor of the last remark to Rosalinda. So you have the floor, David.
Thank you, Terence, and thank you all our collaborators here today. This has been extremely engaging and dynamic. And I actually want to defer most of the time for them to give us some more feedback, but just two quick points. Since we started 3 years ago, I've always mentioned, particularly on the economic development side, the investment with the oil and gas economy, which is my business area of expertise, that what's taken place in Guyana, the transformation all of you have spoken about, is work in progress. We're talking about a political, economic, social system that was closed for decades, not just for business, for travel, for collaboration, for everything. If you weren't doing something with the CARICOM Secretariat, or you had to resolve a family issue in Guyana, you had no business going to that country. That was the unfortunate reality of what took place. We now have, not just because of oil and gas, but prior to that, a good now 10, 15 years of experience of Guyana is now open, not just for business, for engagement, the changes in government, but it's work in progress. These are things that developing countries have taken decades to advance on. The best practices we mentioned, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Mexico, El Salvador, which has been an amazing diaspora experience. They had a jump start because they were not closed. So this is something new, not just for the diaspora, it's something new for the people in Guyana as well. And the caveat is the pace of the change is, and the professor can tell us about this, is not arithmetic, it is geometric. And when you are dealing with the difference between arithmetic and geometric numbers, it is transformation. You're always there. It's like being on one of those spin treadmills constantly. And one of the challenges, and I think this is something to build on for our future discussions, we've discussed it, Terence, in many of our sessions, is what this means is we need to focus on organizational and institutional support and building those institutions that can be resilient and continue into time. And the diaspora experience has something to share there in terms of that engagement. I'd really like to just kudos to the two Guyanese ladies here with us, because what they've been doing is just, and this is not my phrase, so I can't take it. You all know where it comes from. They just do it. That's what they've done. Just do it. Let's stop talking. Just do it. Do the events, do the visits, engage with people. That's what's needed. And let's build institutions as we go along so that they can survive this transformational change. We'll do one of these sessions 10 years from now, and all these issues we're dealing with, I can guarantee you, would have been solved and taken care of, but we're going to have other issues to deal with. So you need to adjust to them, because the geometric speed at which all this is moving is just, amazing. So I'm just going to leave it there. Rest of the time for our talented and gifted colleagues who are doing the work in Guyana and in the diaspora. And thank you all.
Thank you, David. So Ern, you get to give us a last word. And
yeah, I think in as a last word, I'd focus on two bits. With regards to the national diaspora or the diaspora engagement strategy, I think one needs to focus on identifying and giving visibility to some of the challenges that we face. And in response to those challenges, develop specific action plans that will have specific time scales for delivery. This is a mechanism through which you can develop trust, both within the diaspora communities and the local communities back in Ghana. So everybody knows where they stand and what is the progress that is being made, as that can be monitored in time. And then the second point is around recognizing that given Guyana's emerging prominence on the world stage as a result of our newfound wealth, this in itself presents a unique opportunity to capture the hearts and minds of the younger, well, for that matter, older Guyanese also, which would then instill, a greater sense of pride in Guyana and things Guyanese, and as such, play its role in effective diaspora engagement. So I'll leave it to that.
thank you. I've been scrolling through and just popping the questions in, just because I wanted them on the loop, so that when someone is looking at it later, when I'm looking at it later, I can come back to questions that I want to address. So you don't have to respond to them. I'm just sort of, in a way, spooling them in there so that they're part of the record, because there were quite a few, and I should apologize profusely to the folks who are there. Every single time I keep saying I'm going to make this simpler. Actually, you'll note that today I made it simpler. We aren't using one of the tools that we've used in the past, which sometimes I got questions about, that it was a little too complicated. So today we went even simpler, but we're still a little overwhelmed. So don't just note the questions. You don't have to respond to them. I'm just clicking them through so that they're part of the record. So you get your last word, Stacey. So when are you moving to Guyana?
I'm actually on a 3-year plan to actually move back to Guyana. And so all of this is because I have experienced what it's been like to come back and want to do business, think about living. So a couple of things in terms of diaspora strategy. I think that if we continue to wait for the government to get it the way we think it should be done, David said it best. We got to really adapt the attitude of, we got to go do it. I mean, that's my thing. I just feel like we just can't be waiting for everybody to get it right. So there's things that we can drive in our own community. Destination Guyana Now is something that I said I can drive that in my diaspora community, and I can do everything that I can. All the things that I think are not being done, I can begin to get feedback and bring it forward and start to push that agenda. And then I can share. Rosalinda talked about this. There's a whole learning curve that has to happen in country, right? Because there's this gap between what the diaspora thinks need to happen and then what the reality of the situation is in Guyana, and then even how they view us coming in, right? We're kind of arrogant. We want all this done. She said it in her discussion. We want things done specifically for the diaspora. We don't care what's going on in Guyana. Well, when I come there, I want to be able to open me back account. Me ain't got time with what happening on the ground. right? So I think that is a part of the challenge, that there is really two viewpoints of how things are supposed to work. And that's why a lot of it has to be done in both areas. You got to be able to educate your people and create that cultural and societal awareness before they come back into Guyana. And we got to help the people in Guyana to have a better understanding of our viewpoints, particularly folks in government, right? Because they think we just come and we're really entitled and we just want to get the name of the person at the top and make them do what we want them to do. Right. So that in terms of a national strategy, that's a little ways off, because as David is saying, it's voluminous, everything that's coming. It's so huge that they're just trying to keep up with the enormity of the amount of people that's trying to come back into the country to get information, and not just Guyanese, right? Because we're on this global stage now and everybody's trying to get in country. So I think from a strategy standpoint, we all have to work together to start to create collaborative activity that we can start to push this agenda forward. And the last thing I'll talk about is, Rosalinda, I don't know how close you are, but I see a lot of questions coming in. I know we've had this discussion several times about where is the repository. There has to be an electronic repository for people to get information. We're hearing today about this job fair, but that's something that should be pushed out to all diaspora communities. And we have to be able, there's a lot of people asking about, how do you find out where this job fair is going to be? What's going to happen? I know you guys have been working on an electronic repository. I think that has to get up and running. From a strategic standpoint, the thing that I think in the very short term that can be most helpful is that the diaspora unit has to have an active repository of information, points of contact, and things that people can get to where it's a click away. If I'm looking to get a representative for remigration, these are the people. Now I have some of that information, but we got to be able to, if the diaspora unit exists, this is the place for government that this information resides with. We got to be able to get it in a very easy to access format.
Thank you. No, that I think that's a point that should, we will keep that as an action item. Dr. Matthews, the Dean of the Diaspora. I've just given you a title right there. So you've heard the discussion. Give us a few closing remarks. I think you laid it up perfectly for us at the beginning. And so, given what you've heard, any closing thoughts?
Thank you. I am really impressed with the ideas that were shared here from the perspective of the other panelists. And I can see that there is hope with folks like you being in positions of influence in your respective communities through your organization. So I'm warmed about that. I think the issue of trust can be dealt with through more, I think, cross-cultural activities. For example, if the pattern and the methodology of the Guyana Cultural Association can be adopted, and in various states, various communities, and various countries where there's a Guyanese diaspora. So that's one thing I would suggest. Also, the engagement of the second generation. Jamaica has a fascinating model. They have a section that is referred to as the Diaspora Engagement, Youth Diaspora Engagement system, whereby they're engaging the youth. One of the problems with these hometown associations is the succession. The younger folks, what's happening is that the elders are moving on, obviously. but they're having a problem with engaging the younger folk. And what we found is that they're not interested in being on an executive committee and having meetings once a month, and that they're not interested in that. All right, and so I think the hometown associations, for example, and these organizations in the diaspora need to focus on ways to engage the younger people, but not on their terms. Because, for example, let's say we have a fundraiser, and they're saying that we don't get the young people. We invite them, but they don't come. Well, how are you modifying your system to attract younger people? What's happening is that the older folks are more self-satisfying. They have a session, for example, of reggae music or oldies. The young people are not interested in that kind of thing. I asked a few executive members doing my research, what does your mailing list look like for the people you invite? They have the same mailing list that they had 20 years ago. You see, and one more thing is that they don't make as much money at the cash bar. Well, people are drinking less. You know, they're ill. They can't drive when they're high or whatever. So these are little things. They may seem simplistic, but then there's the concern about why aren't we doing well? Why aren't we getting people to succeed us and that kind of thing? So that's what I would say in closing. And it's a very important area because these hometown associations in England and in the US and other countries where there's a Guyanese diaspora, we need to think of ways of succession so they can move on. That's my comment.
So I really appreciate that. And so Rosalinda, you get as the guest and as the sort of, I guess, the point person, all of the questions somehow devolved down to you. You get the last word. Given what you've heard and given where you are, what are the thoughts that you? I mean, I certainly think this question that arose about a repository that's come up many times about some place where you can go find the gap analysis, some place where you can go find the job fair. That it needs to be disseminated more. That certainly is I think something that can be looked at again in your office. And so you get the last word. I'm talking.
Thank you so much. So once again, Professor, thank you so much for this forum. It's a very good forum, and I encourage you to keep it up. You and Dr. Lewis, it's great to bring different people to share their views. And of course, the information being shared is very, very good. It's also helpful to me because I'm able to take notes as well and to see what those concerns are and to work on them. I can tell you that. Stacey made a great point there in terms of the repository. We are aware of that. I can tell you that is actually going to get launched very soon. We did cater for the creation of it in our budget for 2024. So we have started working on it. We do have the content already and everything. It's just a matter of just finalize a couple of things that we'll launch it very soon. That will also include a bit of our database as well, where people can, we can be able to gather information from about different skill sets on it. So like I said, it was actually a part of our budget for this year. So you should see that one very soon. We also were able to finish off our AI basically. So we're using technology and 10 agencies they've already got content on it, so that when we share that number out very soon by next week, the diaspora, anywhere, even foreigners, can actually speak to the AI agent and get any information on pretty much the 10 key agencies where we've tested her. She's actually able to answer quite a lot of questions that are outside of her remit as well. So it's a fantastic tool that we've been given to talk about. So you don't have to contact us, the diaspora unit. You can talk to the agent and she'll give you almost any information that you need, whether it's on registration of banks, housing, infrastructure, investment, getting a company register, NIS matters, all of that is actually already loaded onto our AI agent. So you're going to see that being shared very soon. So we're going that way, also using technology, not just for the older generation, but also for the younger one, basically. Professor, there were some fantastic questions that came up on your stuff, and we're happy that you're putting out. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer them, but I can tell you, we are, like you, I'm glad you did that. I have made notes of it too, and I will review the program, the ended part with those questions. I will give you some information that you can share to those individuals who have asked for it. I can assure you that the diaspora unit, or I should say vis-a-vis the government of Guyana, is interested, genuinely interested in diaspora engagement and the Guyanese overseas being an active partner in development in Guyana. That is why we do what we do. And that is why you'll see things like the job fair happening. Professor, by the way, before I forget, I sent you the flyer for the job fair. It has a QR code. If you can blast it also for your list, just for the purpose somebody asked about it, how to register. But I will officially send you Stacy and her group, Oren and his group as well, just for information purposes. And they may have persons in the US as well that be interested in it. So you can officially share it. I'm going to officially communicate with you subsequently on this here. But I want to thank you so much for being a part of this here, inviting me to be part of this here. I've taken your note of your comments, suggestion, and comments. We will be acting on it, and you can see a whole lot more of information coming up to the diaspora. You will see the changes that you're looking for in that engagement. I can assure you that.
On that note, David, you get to say thank you so that you get to close us out.
We went a bit over, but I think all great quality time. So thank you to our speakers who joined us today, our audience in Guyana, internationally, the diaspora. We are scheduled for our episode 3 of this season 3 next Wednesday, August 14th, going back to a few of our roots in terms of the energy situation in Guyana. Our webinar that day will be Powering the Future, the Energy Landscape in Guyana, and the Gas to Energy Project. So look out for notices on social media, in your email networks. We'll be sending the information for that. And thank you all, and have a great summer.
Thank you, colleagues. I have to jump to a next meeting, so I hope I wasn't distracting. I'm all the way in Budapest, and so I'm here for a day or two, and so I appreciate you guys coming in on this. I hope everything looked pretty good, and so there wasn't any glitches on the. But you know, when you travel around, you see the world, and you know, Guyana has an opportunity to jump the gap, and you know, let's hope we can take it as seriously as we can and do the best job we can, you know, together, united in that sense. And so take care. I have to
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.